Alright, I was balls deep in my Warframe guide I was making, and I had the Weapon of the Week done, and I was excited, and then there's Riven 911, so we're here. Hello, welcome to fun time. Okay, in this video, I'm going to cover the Riven changes that I'm sure you've heard plenty about if you're kind of have your ear to the ground. I'm here to give my unsolicited opinion per usual, so I'm going to cover the Riven changes, kind of word for word from MDE, and then the actual, like, more practical real effect, both negative and positive. I'm going to cover both sides of community sentiment that I've seen, along with my own lengthy opinion. I think people are being kind of dramatic on both ends, but that is just the internet. That doesn't mean they're invalid. That doesn't mean that their concerns are not real. I'm also going to discuss the mentality behind gambling, online gambling specifically, talk about Rivens, the nuanced nature of Warframe specifically, and kind of what's going on there, and also like some solutions and some stuff that's going to happen moving forward. If you kind of want a TLDR of my opinion, I'd rather spend more time farming the things I can control than rolling for the things I cannot. That is like the TLDR here. This change is... We'll get into it. Like, sub, hype, all the crap. This is my educated opinion. I love discussion. You're more than welcome to disagree, agree. Every video I make is an invitation to talk with your fellow commenters and myself. I reply as often as I can. I love discussion a lot, but just don't be a prick in my comments. Thank you. Okay, to cover the change. So, basically, they're making it so that you can combine stats on your Riven into new stats. My understanding is that it works like X plus Y equals Z. These new modifiers, which will be things like weak point damage, status damage, and whatnot, will be unavailable through stat cycling. So Rivens are still going to roll like they usually do with Kuva. That's going to be the same, but in this case, you can combine two stats together that are together on a weapon and create a new one, which is really interesting. In this example, it's using like the minus multi-shot and the plus damage in order to create weak point damage. So again, I do believe it's like basically X plus Y equals Z, right? So you'd be looking for the damage in the multi-shot, and it would create weak point damage. Then it also gives you a random trait. So not only do you have to roll the two traits, the X and the Y, to create the Z, assuming you're looking for a certain Z, which you will be, you're doing a Riven mod, don't, like, come on. And then you could also get a random trait. So there's like already, that's a lot of layers of RNG, and I understand people's concerns. I don't think that's great. That is like multiplicative RNG with the RNG that's already in Rivens, so it's a lot, but I'm just going to keep going through the matter of fact, and we'll talk about opinions in a second. This will allow for, like, cold and heat make blast, blast and toxin make gas, and that's uniquely strong. The second thing, so we have combination, and that's going to be a separate resource farmed in new content that will allow you to do that combination. And then secondly, they allow you to lock a single stat. So you will basically have a new resource, and using that resource per roll, you will keep a stat. For example, if you got a negative zoom, which is a generally good negative to have to boost your positive stats, you can lock that one in and continue to roll, but you will be spending that new resource every time. So whether this farm is good or bad, that's going to be actually really important, because Kuva rolling is a quite lengthy process that you can potentially do quite a lot of due to its RNG nature, which is not fun, not great, especially when it's just been further multiplied, right? TLDR, you can lock a single Riven stat, and two stats can create a fixed other stat that is normally unavailable through cycling. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, includes status damage, weak point damage, blast gas. Blast gas is really good because blast and gas don't scale with heat or toxin or heat and cold, whatever. And so you're getting a bunch of extra damage, and then you're also saving mod room. So I'll talk about that more in a second. Also, viral. Rework that shit, please. It's a boring modifier that just gives you more damage. Change it into something new. One of my ideas was to change it into like the blast of status, where like it lets you transfer statuses to nearby enemies. Whatever. I'll probably do a video on that later. And then, of course, the process of combining adds another stat, which is problematic. So let's talk about community sentiment now, which is really fun, of course, always. I've seen this comment, this exact dialogue, probably 5 times in the last day. I'm recording this probably a day earlier than you're seeing it. And the quote is, "Screw the Riven Mafia." Firstly, also, I pulled this really funny thing from Sopranos. I love this. Anyway, there is no Riven Mafia. Mafias have actual power. This is like Riven high schoolers that like egg your house on Halloween or whatever, and not steal your like catalytic converters out of your car. Okay, this is like the Riven Mafia is not a thing. Okay, is there an annoying, obnoxious? That's like saying that the kids trading Pokemon cards during like lunch are like the high school bullies. Get a grip. Also, I just said Pokemon, so you guys would comment for attention. I know it's Pokemon. I'm not being okay. Anyway, they spam trade chat. It's annoying. I will also say that I am guilty of this. I get kicks out of watching people lose their value out of like the fake value digital goods bullshit. Okay, when people lose money from NFTs, I have a giggle, I have a laugh. That's just me. Does that make me a bad person? That's not for you or me to decide, quite frankly. But yeah, so like people are getting excited essentially because of the prospect that because we've added one stat lock that, oh, the Riven market is screwed. But it's not, in my opinion, based on my observation of the facts. The stat lock, the single stat lock you get out of 4 stats potentially, and a new combined stat, which is going to be really annoying to deal with. But the addition of the completely unique combined stat lines means Rivens have acquired this insane new ceiling that a single stat lock cannot and will not ever gatekeep from folks who want to gamble their lives away to make a bunch of plat or to create the most god roll Riven in their brain, right? There is so much RNG in Rivens. There is the getting the melee or the rifle, and then the actual melee or the rifle you want, and then the numbers you want, and then the stats you want, the negative you want, the amount of stats you want. It's a nightmare. It's a lot. It's supposed to be fun, and for some players, it's like me, it is kind of fun sometimes. But it's just been multiplied with this change when it does happen, which is a lot. So the floor has effectively lowered, right? The stat lock is a good thing, and if the stat lock was the only thing here, then yes, the Riven market would categorically take a hit. It just would. That's a fact. But because they've added a higher ceiling, the most obnoxious part of the Riven community that everyone complains about is just going to be invigorated and going to be way more toxic. Like, I don't know how people kind of miss that, right? So we're taking like 1 step forward, which is the lock, and then 2 steps back, 1 step to the side, turn around, 1 jump this time. Like, the plot has completely lost, okay? So this idea that like the Riven Mafia, quote unquote, that like upper 5% of players that are like blowing up your trade chat and listing their Rivens for 12k and being super obnoxious, those are not going to go away. They are going to get worse from my observation. Okay, so how problematic is the new ceiling from like a literal perspective, right? Because I'm talking about a more emotional perspective, like, oh, I hate when trade chat's blown up. I hate dealing with obnoxious Riven traders. Like, that's kind of like emotional stuff that you can kind of ignore. But so how problematic, like, how might you feel about the ceiling? For me, the answer is that the ceiling is actually fairly problematic. It's very complicated. It's very complicated because this is Warframe, of course, it's complicated. Rivens have never been necessary, ever. There's like a few interactions, like the Agrit and the Psychotid, where like the Agrit you want to be able to throw 4 grenades out at once. The Psychotid it scales with multi-shot, how many enemies it can group. Where Rivens are like, those are cases where Rivens are like exclusively kind of desirable, but they're niche weapons with niche interactions, and like that's not gonna set you back a bunch of plat if you decide you want to send out 4 Agrit grenades in 1 fan, right? However, with this new change, there are going to be a lot of very powerful potential synergies where Rivens become a lot more necessary feeling. Put that in caps. That is a real thing. For some players, that feeling does not bother them. For some players, it eats them alive. The fact that they don't have the optimal thing. And in this new opening ceiling, that will become a more real thing. If you're a dev, that feeling is very important that you are keeping track of. Right, so again, a big example here is the blaster gas. That's the most obvious one that I listed here. I made a whole video talking about how I wish these mods were added to the game. Not this way. Monkey's paw kind of curled on my ass. My bad. Because I think single target weapons really suffer where they have to mod the blasting gas on. They have low space status chance or whatever, and like it's annoying because they can't mod the way they want to. With this change, you can get blast on with a single mod. Not only are you getting blast on, but you're getting scaled blast because blast is properly scaling now because it's a blast mod. Same way like valence formation works, right? So these Rivens will now allow for that elemental damage to scale and then give you the mod slot. So you're getting the scaling blast, you're getting blast with 1 mod, and so now you have room for the mods you actually wanted to put on instead of having to use elements to combine them, 2 elements to combine them, right? And now you also have status damage as a combined Riven stat. It's a lot. It is a lot. And so the kind of the question I have for you, and that I'm kind of posing to myself, is how much does that matter to you, right? For me, Rivens have not been made more accessible, right? They're time gated for the most part. Veiled ones are pretty cheap. For 95% of the weapons, Rivens are like pretty cheap to buy, but most people just don't engage with it, and that's okay because it's probably the most toxic part of the Warframe community, quite frankly, especially in modern day. The stat lock does make a decent decrease to the RNG floor. Or I guess would you call it increase in the floor? I'm not really sure. Anyway, but the increase, yeah, you would call it increase in the floor. But there's been a massive increase in the ceiling that's like 10 times the size, exponentially bigger. Rivens are fairly easy to get, again, for those not like kind of non-meta, more niche weapons. They're very cheap in platinum. For me, I love buying weird, quirky little Rivens for like weird, quirky little weapons. Except for when Riven disposition is not being actively balanced, which it never is. That's later in the video. My fault. Um, Farming Kuva is still a process that opens you up to like super toxic environments. Toxic is relative. I've played League and Deadlock and probably 10,000 hours of Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Okay, I know what toxic is. Warframe is not bad, but it's all relative. And so Kuva farming is like kind of content islandy. Like you have to do meta RBs or like survival and all that stuff. If you've seen a meta arbitration, you know that that's a real snooze fest. The increase in RNG and utility and damage, all that, the huge increase in the ceiling of Rivens is not even close to proportional to the increase in accessibility that is caused by the stat lock, right? Again, one step forward, 2,000 steps back kind of thing, right? An immeasurable amount of steps backwards and makes it a whole lot more difficult. There's this argument that I should just ignore Rivens, or that I ignore Rivens, whatever. It is explicitly because I am pro Riven and I like expression and I like uniqueness, and I'm not actually a huge fan that like everyone can just copy each other's builds. It gets pretty boring. It makes it so players never really learn to mod, but whatever. That's me being kind of annoying. I like Rivens a lot. I don't want to ignore them. I think the system's neat. The system is an afternoon of work away from being good. Again, minus disposition. I don't know what intern decided this position should be good. I don't know what intern is balancing it right now. It's super frustrating. I don't know why this disposition is even still in the game posting Harnens. It's absurd. Anyway, this change only like further serves to, again, to invigorate the toxicity of that small portion of the Riven community that is shooting for god rolls all the time. I know what I have. 10k plat only. Don't waste my time. Like Facebook fucking marketplace, okay? Shouldn't say a potty word on this program, my fault. Anyway, I'm trying to do better. I think the presence of a god roll really breaks people's brains, and that's fair. I don't have a job in social work, so I don't understand psychology perfectly. But it pushes them to kind of ignore the system and just like not want to even touch it. If I can't have a god roll, not interested. Or hate the system, resent it altogether, which is fair. Those are two very fair responses, I think. I can't say for sure whether the existence of god rolls or Rivens themselves are important to you as a player, but I can assure you that Rivens are not needed, let alone god rolls. So it creates this kind of, the economy around god rolls is even more obnoxious because like it's a bunch of players who have kind of made up value for these things that players don't need. It's not just a luxury. It's like a tier above a luxury, right? Luxuries you could debate. Like if I buy a nicer boat that's just prettier, like you could make the case that that's like a luxury still, but like maybe it's really nice, right? This is like buying a, I can't even think of like it's like buying a statue of a boat. It's like, again, I hate to make the low-hanging fruit NFT joke, but it's adjacent, right? There is something to be said about the satisfaction of the player in getting directly what they want when time and effort are put in, right? If I go, and again, there is RNG involved in this, right? Or no, actually, let's just use a different example. Let's say I need to grind 1 million credits. I do the index, I farm 1 million credits from 4 runs. Is that how that works? I think so. Been a while. If I play well, I'm just going to get 1 million credits. I know how to do it. It's done. Even with a little less RNG, it's like, oh, I'm farming Protea, right? I know within this amount of time, I'm pretty likely to get Protea. The RNG with Rivens is so insane, even now, but especially after this change, it will be like actually immeasurably kind of insane that players who are going to put in the effort to get these tuner resources, and then the Kuva, and then the actual Riven itself. There is this concept to talk about in one of my best videos. One of my best videos didn't do that great, but it's basically late game tips. And the second to last tip, I talk about a thing called burnout bait. And burnout bait is essentially the concept that you are going to go do a farm, and you're like, you're just gonna, I'm gonna pull myself up by my bootstraps or whatever. I'm gonna just put my head down. I'm gonna farm this thing. You get out of the farm, you have it, and the farm was miserable, and you hate it, and you got what you want, and it's crafted. You don't even want to use it. You don't even want to play the game. You don't even want to see the game for the next 2 weeks, and maybe you just never pick it up again, right? That can kind of happen with Riven, because you are guaranteed nothing with Rivens. You are guaranteed absolutely nothing. And that is incredibly frustrating to some players. And again, some people literally can't help themselves. The concept of the god roll rots their brain. Even the concept of gambling just rots their brain, right? And that is something as a dev that you have to take into consideration, right? The player is putting in time and effort to acquire Kuva, the Bluva, the new resource, XY resource, the Riven itself. And so when slot machines are not involved, it's complex, and that becomes more complex psychologically because the Rivens aren't needed at all. Yet people are pretending they're like worth 10,000 plat or whatever, right? It's so strange. It's so, again, the slide is mainly about like how I'm not gonna ignore events because I like them. Just because DE does a concept poorly or changes it poorly doesn't mean the concept itself is bad. Like, this is something cool that we can flip into something better, right? Don't abandon things just because they're a little bit broken. We can fix. On that note, DE loves making these rushed systems or content islands and then abandoning them. So every time I'm like Pavloved negatively, where it's like, okay, DE has this thing. Oh, it's looking like it's not perfect. It's looking like there's a problem. My fear is amped by 10 because I know it's not getting revisited, right? Like, that's horrifying. So that's kind of one thing for me is it's like, again, I make this example every time. I love Foley's astrograph mods. Love them to death. I think the concept of custom art mods is so stinking cool. But I'm not playing hours of Foley's hunting to get everyone. I'm just not. Okay, I love big, beautiful women, but not that much. Okay, that's too much Foley's hunt for me, man. Whatever. Okay, next slide. Online gambling is weird, but Warframe is weirder, actually, is the name of this slide. I'm not a huge fan of gambling, right? At the ripe age of 14, I gambled away probably $500 worth of Christmas money and birthday money on a third-party Counter-Strike Global Offensive skin site. So I haven't touched a casino since, and I learned my lesson that gambling is demonic. Anyway, while this set of Riven changes does have positive stuff I will be talking about on the next slide, my personal belief is that adding more gambling, especially multiplicatively with other sources, which that's what this is. This is multiplicative gambling. Multiplicatively scaling gambling, if you will. Oh, it's a Roar modifier. Is generally the worst thing you can do as a game developer with, first of all, a community that has a lot of good faith built in for you, but also a community, you're responsible for these players' time and the passion. They're at your mercy here, and adding more gambling is just not a good idea when there's already other things that kind of need to be done with this game, in my opinion, to make it really exceed. Now with Warframe, I think it's really odd. This is something I'm kind of scratching my brain over. I don't think DE makes money off of the Riven economy. I don't think people are actually spending real life dollars to plat to convert into Rivens. I'm pretty sure, like, so you can't buy Kuva. So like the only thing you would do is you'd spend the real life money into platinum, which you would then buy a Riven for. But I don't think players are actually doing that. It's mostly just like people grind. It's weird. I would love to be proven wrong because I'm really curious, but I don't think DE makes that much money. So I don't understand. I don't see the motive of only adding one stat lock and then also adding like more injury on top of it. So like if they just add the stat lock, I think that'd be kind of a great change. But then they added, like, again, another instance of like multiplicative gambling. So I struggle to see the motive. Like, okay, they're probably not going to make much money off of this unless they monetize those two combining and locking resources, which would be insane. So do they just want to like make like a time draining experience or make it more frustrating? I genuinely don't know. I could be stupid. I have no idea. Maybe they did. Maybe they make a gazillion dollars off of Rivens, but I think that's first of all awful way to make money. I also think that's why they're not making money that way. That I don't think they intend to. I do also think that people are being a little emotionally intense over this change. More gambling is bad. And there are a lot of gamers who literally cannot help themselves. I understand that. You understand that. But this is kind of like I struggle with this part of the conversation, right? Because it's very emotional. But what this is a frustrating mechanic for the majority of players. Most players already ignore Rivens because of the RNG. DE, like, RNG is part of the Warframe experience, but usually within reason. Rivens are a different monster entirely. Rivens are probably one of the most single toxic things ever in Warframe, which, again, that's relative. Again, I like Rivens, but Rivens have been the source of a lot of toxicity. I remember when Rivens got added. I've been playing this game for quite a long time, so changes to Rivens, people get a little upset. People are very, like, head on a swivel when it comes to Rivens, and it's very valid, right? It makes perfect sense. It's a frustrating mechanic, again, for most players. There's like a 10% of players that are like Riven specialists and are like actually creaming their pants over this, okay? So again, it's a frustrating mechanic that's being added that most players don't like, that DE doesn't really benefit from or profit from, as far as I understand. And the reward is, again, you don't need it. You don't need Riven mods. You don't need God rolls. You don't need Rivens generally. So it's, again, you're dealing with a mechanic that people don't like for a reward you don't need, and the company itself doesn't benefit from it. I'm either stupid or just very confused, or something is amiss, and I'm just missing something. So again, really weird. Gambling is evil. I don't know why online gambling like through whatever is even legal, but whatever. Anywho, things I am happy about, because there are things I'm happy about. Again, when I first saw this change, it was on Reddit through kind of basically like a different like I didn't see the word for word change. I just saw that you'd be able to combine elements, and I got really excited. Right, I still have the post on my channel. And there's a lot of sentiment, flaming, insulting, or straight up infantilizing folks who are excited about this content. There's also like a crazy amount of content creator hate, which is like really weird. Again, obviously it's somewhat warranted, because like again, people do Warframe more than almost any other game I've seen. Maybe that's not true, but a lot of games, or more than a lot of games, people are echo chambers from their like favorite content creator in this game pretty often. Players do rely on their content creators for their builds and their metas and stuff like that, the strategies and whatnot. So maybe content creators should be under a little more scrutiny, right? But like people are like, again, oh, like you're basically just getting called a gambling addict, right, off rip, which is like crazy. I understand gambling is exciting for a lot of players. I know about about Twitch and like I think some of this should just be straight up illegal. But this is about Warframe. This is a video about Warframe. I generally love. Let's talk about positives. I generally love the idea of mixed elementals being more accessible. Again, I made a whole video on it. Okay, some time ago. I love the idea of more unique multipliers, status damage. There's only so many sources of headshot multipliers. There's only so many sources of. I would like to see more ways to contribute to damage than just the usual BS, right? I like modding being a more unique process. The only issue is that it's one Riven mod per build, right? And there's tons of not just RNG, but tons of work to engage with the RNG. It's literally it's insane. Like it's not like RNG when it's added to the game as RNG, that's just RNG, which I sound like I'm a bumbling idiot, but I promise. Like, for example, when I played Overwatch back in the day, not Overwatch 2, but just Overwatch, you got a loot crate, right? And there was no option to buy the stuff directly. You just got everything from loot crates for the most part, as far as I recall when the game first came out. The RNG is just RNG. That's all it is. You don't actually you just have to play the game. So you're already playing the game and you get the RNG. That's it. You don't do anything extra. In this case, you have to go get the Kuva, go get the Bluva or whatever it's called, and which is like I think Bluva is going to be the combined resource, and then you have to go get the other resource to lock your slots, because Lord knows you're not going to roll away one of your combined slots, right? Again, we don't have the full details of how everything works, but like you're doing a ton of grinding to just gamble. Grinding should be for a good outcome, and maybe a little bit of RNG, right? You know, from Warframes, there's RNG involved in that for sure, right? Drop chances and tables, like all that stuff. But here, it just feels like a massive misstep where we're adding a colossal amount of RNG and more work to do that, right? Like that's crazy. That's great. Maybe I didn't explain myself perfectly there, but my throat's also drying up, so you know it goes. Also, oh yikes, it's this part. Okay, I'm gonna get taken out back for this, but I do love the Riven market on a small scale. Okay, again, I don't like the 5% of spaz freaks in trade chat who are just blast. Again, I already did the imitation a million times. I like the thought that I can get a Riven. Coincidentally, like I buy my Riven ciphers every week, right, from Teshin, and from Paladino. I like the idea that maybe one day I'm sitting down, I'm late game, I'm just looking for stuff to do. I'm in their retirement home, borderline, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna open a couple of rifle ribbons. Oh, I get a Torrid one. Oh, I get like whatever, Latron. I'm able to just like pawn it off for plat. I did nothing for that. That was a passive process. I passively just farmed my, steel essence or whatever from doing my content that I normally did. It's out of the way, or it's in the way, right? It's in the way. And so like I just made plat randomly. Maybe I roll it a little bit. Oh, I got a good roll. I'll sell it off. Again, obviously in the upper echelon of weapons, people are like god roll or nothing because of the way supply and demand works. I'm not gonna lecture you on that. I'm sure you understand it, at least the basics. But like for me, I have some niche ribbons, and I'm like, oh, I'll just try to palm this off and like make some plat off of it. I think it's cool to put in a little bit effort. It's a little more exciting. Like there's more surefire ways to make plat, but there is some appeal in a little bit of RNG. There's a chance I make nothing off of this time that I invest, but there's a chance I make something, and I'm okay. I'm okay with making that equation because I've decided, I've got enough plat. I want to do something a little more fun, do something a little more high risk. It's just when that is taken to the extreme of god rolls, I know what I have, blah, 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 like that's annoying, right? So I do like the Riven market at a small scale bite me, whatever. Get bent. Okay. The last slide here is called Shockingly, I'm Not Omniscient. Okay. There are a lot of pieces here that we currently do not have in terms of information that would likely only make the situation worse, and would be pretty useless in making the situation better, right? So there's two completely new resources. The quality of whose farm is completely up in the air, right? We don't know how long each mission is going to take. We don't know like how much of the resource we're going to get, how many times we're going to have to replay it, if there's RNG involved in that, God forbid, right? So even if the farm is good and fun, that's the farm part. Again, I talked about how we're farming to roll. That sucks. So even if the farm is good, we can't make the rolling much better outside of our one stat lock, which is a huge problem, right? We should do, again, I can't say the solution for sure is, well, no, it is for sure stat locks. But it doesn't seem like D is going to do that. So I don't really know. I don't really know in terms of solutions. There is no farm, no matter how good it is, that stops the layered RNG from existing, and base Kuva is still kind of a content island a little bit, and that's a problem. Okay. We'll just have to see, right? This is also, again, this has been like quite the conversation. I've never seen so many Warframe creators kind of throw their hat in the ring, so I'd be curious to see if there's a hot fix, or like a hot fix, a pre-hot fix, whatever. Basically, if changes happen before the update is released, I'd be curious because people are talking about this quite a lot. And again, there's like no evidence that DE makes money from ribbons, so I'm confused as to why like we're not just adding more locks to make awesome ribbons. And like, again, because if you add locks, what locks do is they basically convert the equation of farming to rolling to farming to having to roll less. That is what the equation should be. The more static work, the more like objective, just like I'm farming the material, I get the material you put in, the less rolling you should have to do. But in this case, you're farming to roll, and that's just garbage. So I don't know. I hope, for me, I do hope the resources are fairly accessible. I hope the game mode is fun. I hope there's uniquely something going on, something engaging. I can actually use my brain while playing Warframe. That'd be great. I've always been an advocate for more difficult, more challenging, more engaging Warframe. But that's really it. That's all I have. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. I've got the weapon of the week is done. My new Warframe guide is on the way. And I'm likely going to be doing a Banshee Volume 2 guide as well at some point in the future. That's not going to be the newest one, but it will be one coming out soon. So I love you guys so much. Thank you for listening to me rant. My throat's drying up. Love you guys tons. Thank you so endlessly much for your viewership and listening. I will talk to you very soon. Like, sub, hype, all the garbage. I'll catch you on the flip. Peace.